On this episode of Locked On Angels, it's Fanmail Friday, and you wondered, what would it take to get Walker Buehler? Or how about Bo Bichette? Maybe even Vladdy Jr. I know it's a dream, but we're going to talk a bit of reality. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by Prize Picks. You can download the app today. Use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Happy Friday to you, and thanks for being here for this Fanmail Friday edition of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, it's our third off season here at Locked On Angels. We're getting ready for, all the big news that's going to come out of this off season. Of course, we got to get past the playoffs and whatnot, but we are going to be covering Angels baseball Monday through Friday, every single weekday through late December.
John, I have a question. Are you watching the playoffs at all? Are you watching any of the playoffs? I mean, so is there like a heart stirring, like an excitement, like an emotion? Or are you watching it nonchalant with a beverage in your hand with your feet kicked back?
You know what? It's fun to watch and not have anything on the line. I think that's kind of the most important part. I have a soft spot for the Guardians because they're not the multi-million-dollar club that the other three are. But I also am kind of partial toward the Mets because I wrote that trade deadline article over the offseason about what the Mets should do. Should they be buyers or sellers? Yeah. And the fact that they made it because they bought. And I even said that they should trade for Jesse Winker, and they did. And so I think there's a little vindication there. I'm like, yeah, go Mets.
That's cool.
All right.
That's cool. Yeah, I've watched a little bit, but I've watched more of The Penguin on HBO Max. Oh, it's so good. Okay, we can go back to our show.
So we haven't done a Fan Mail Friday in a while just because there's been so much news, and we did our off-season grades, of course. But I'm really excited to get into our questions today. In fact, this first one, Mike, comes from Russell Chung on YouTube. He said, how do you guys feel about going after Walker Buehler in the offseason? Do you guys think it's possible that we get him? With the Dodgers rotation filled to the brim with young pitching talent, presumably a relatively healthy pitching staff. Sorry, Gavin Stone. With Shohei, Glasnow, Yamamoto, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, maybe Kershaw, Kaspikaris. I haven't heard of that guy. Bobby Miller, Landon Knack, Honeywell Jr., Grove. Lots of names there. What are the odds they will offer Buehler an offer that is anything but a lowball offer, even if they are trying to fill a six-man rotation? As an Angel and Dodgers fan, I know there aren't many of us. It's weird to hear. I happen to think it's very possible that Walker Buehler can be a sneaky pickup of an ace for most rotations in MLB, and especially big steal for this rotation. I remember correctly, Buehler was a bit of an Iron Man before he went down in 22 with his second Tommy John surgery. I know his velocity wasn't there this year, and that he's taken a while to start steadying out his production and performance. But every time I watch him pitch, I can tell he has quite a lot of stuff left in the tank and could be exactly what this pitching staff needs. Mike, what do you say?
Yeah, you've talked often about they're going to have to get really creative and crafty in finding the right pitchers. And this feels like a Walker Buehler move feels like what the Kansas City Royals did last offseason. This feels like that Lugo move. It feels like they're getting a couple of guys that are kind of not on the radar, but they bring them in and then they end up pitching pretty well for that team. Walker Buehler comes in with some pretty good numbers, John. He's in his career 47-22, a 3.27 ERA, a 1.25 ERA plus. Best season was in 21, 16-4, a 2.47 ERA, was an all-star, fourth in Cy Young voting, and had a 1.71 ERA plus. Now, I know this last season wasn't great for him, but John, he seems to be doing really well in the playoffs. I know he didn't go very deep against the Mets, but he gave the Dodgers exactly what they needed.
Who goes deep in games anymore in the playoffs?
Right. He gave the Dodgers exactly what they needed to get to that bullpen. And so I'm watching him, and then I saw this comment come up, and I went, that's not actually too far-fetched, and I don't think it's a bad idea. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a couple things I think we need to consider. He's not getting the chases that he used to. The whiff percentage is down across all of his pitches. The fastball velo, I know that Russell mentioned it. It's actually, he's averaged about 95, and that's where he's been the last few years. He used to be like 96, 95 and a half. You can see that slowly ticking down over the years. But the biggest problem, Mike, is the movement and the location isn't quite there. The stuff plus on his fastball, which kind of measures the nastiness and the movement, according to Fangraphs, that's fallen off significantly. I would consider a Buehler signing kind of like how we can view Chris Sale now. And that is Chris Sale, who had Tommy John, had a lot of issues before this amazing 2024 season that he had. He had some additional injuries in addition to his Tommy John. He missed a lot of time. So if the Angels are going to sign Walker Buehler, I think we need to expect that 2025 is not going to be all sunshine, rainbows, and flowers, right? It's going to be a difficult season for him to bounce back and get through it. And maybe even into 2026, he could still have his struggles. Now, would he be a boost to this rotation? 100%. Yes, he would absolutely be an improvement. He's gotten paid about $8 million the last 2 years. Those are arbitration salaries. But considering the contract that Chris Sale got at age 30, which was $29 million a year for 5 years with the Red Sox, Buehler, I would imagine, at his age 30 season, is going to get like a $28, $32 million range. And I say that not because, I'm trying to inflate anybody's numbers here, but I think that he's going to be one of those targets out there. And I think teams are going to be really interested in going after him. And so I think it's going to be a competitive market. I know that he hasn't been the same guy, but I also think that give him a year or two, he's going to turn things around and get back to that guy. So if the Angels really want to see the benefit of signing a Walker Buehler, they're going to have to give him a few years to get there. Again, age 30, ideally you can pick up about 5 years or so, but I think that would come probably at a pretty steep cost. Yeah. I know that the injuries and whatnot might deflate that salary number a little bit, but I'm just thinking, if you're making $8 million now, pre-free agency, you're going to want at least a $20 million raise to come off of that. So those are my thoughts on Buehler. I really just think that it's going to take some time for him to get through some of these issues that he's had. Still a successful pitcher. The location is something that I think that you can work on, but at the end of the day, he's going to need some time to really get back to that form.
Nick Vlahakis on YouTube asked this question. Just saw an article. The Blue Jays are expected to go all in on Juan Soto. Hey. So it got me thinking, are they going to need to trade Vlad Jr. and probably Bo Bichette to make room? Could Bichette potentially be a choice to take over at third base for us? He's only 26, and the Jays need to offload him to make financial room for Soto, so it could be an easy pickup if we traded somebody like Anderson and a prospect. Johnny, Bo Bichette coming back, celebrating his dad, Dante Bichette, when he was in Anaheim, and maybe even Vlad Jr.? Let's talk about Bo Bichette for just a moment. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I am a big fan of Bo Bichette. He's owed $17.5 million next year in 2025, and he's going to be a free agent in 2026. Mike, he's hit about 300 or better every year except for 2024. The lowest I've seen was 290, right? And so he's just a hit machine. The biggest issue, if you go and look at Bo Bichette, his average this year was like 225, but the biggest issue was injuries. The results were bad for him this season, but it wasn't so much like did he forget how to hit, or maybe his approach at the plate changed? Because all of his plate discipline metrics, I looked it up on Fangraphs, swinging at pitches inside and outside the zone, laying off pitches that he shouldn't be swinging at. It's all the same as it ever was when he was hitting 300. So it's not as if anything changed at the plate, but you do notice that hard hit percentage is down, exit velocity is down, and that has everything to do, especially when you're 26 years old, with injuries. And he's dealt with injuries to his knee. He's had neck spasms. He had 2 calf strains in 2024. He fractured his finger while he was taking grounders in September, warming up. So they just put him on the IL. Given the fact that he's been on the IL since September, I hope that he's had plenty of time to recover and not put too much strain, because I think he'll come back and do really well next season. He hasn't played third base in the bigs, but a typical shortstop can move to third base. That's usually where they go in their progression, as they continue throughout their career. His ultimate zone rating at short has been positive the last couple of years. So I don't think it's too out of the question to see him make that move to third base. What would it take to get somebody like a Bichette, Mike?
Well, like you mentioned, John, he has 1 year left, and Keegan Matheson, who covers the Blue Jays, recently did a Q&A that said that the Blue Jays need significant bullpen help. And I can't believe I'm just about to say this next sentence, considering that's a strength for the Angels. They have some depth, right? They have some depth. It's a possibility for them. So not necessarily like a Ben Joyce, but maybe a Ryan Zefferjon, or maybe a couple of minor league arms that we've talked about that have performed well in the minor leagues, like an Eric Torres. That could be somebody. John, I think this seems kind of doable, doesn't it? And you maybe don't need to move Bichette to third. Maybe he goes to second, and you have Rengifo at third, and you got a really young infield, a really fun infield. I mean, there's a lot of options if you do bring him in, and I'd be pretty stoked to see Bo Bichette on the Halos.
Yeah, especially at 26 years old. The hope would be that you could keep him beyond 2025, right? Now, you mentioned Big Vladdy Daddy Jr. How would you feel about that, Mike? Do you think what do you think it would take to get that done? Or I know that he wants to play. He wants to play third base, for the Blue Jays. So that answers a lot of questions. What do you say?
Yeah, that's a big trade, and him at third base is going to be a little bit more wear and tear on his body. The Angels would probably have to part with some of the names that we wouldn't necessarily want to part with if they made a trade for him.
Right.
I don't know if the Blue Jays would make a move for Vladdy Jr. if they bring in Juan Soto, because they were talking to Shohei Ohtani, and it didn't sound like they were going to make any moves to bring him in. It sounded like they were just going to build a team, and they were close this last year. And so I don't think it would be unwise for them to have a Vladdy Jr. and a Juan Soto in that lineup. And I think it would be very wise for them to maybe use some of their younger talent, some of their guys that are maybe expendable, like a Bo Bichette, to get some better arms for their bullpen and help stockpile that team. But if I had to choose, John, it would probably make more sense to get Bo Bichette. But you know that I would love to have Vladdy Jr. on the Halos, right?
Wouldn't?
Come on.
Yeah, who wouldn't want Vladdy Jr. on the Halos? And, maybe in free agency, they can make a run at him as well. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up on Locked On Angels, we talked about the coaches this week, management. Now it's your turn. You guys left us some great comments that we're going to share about what you think Enright did and Johnny Washington did. We're going to get into all of your comments coming right up.
Today's show is brought to you by Hims. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, Viagra, Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online. You just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. And if prescribed, everything ships to you in a discreet package, all for free, no insurance needed. One low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. And you can start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personal ED treatment options. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions do apply. You can see their website for details and important safety information. Subscriptions required. Prices vary based on product and subscription plan.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And everydayers, if you haven't done so already, check out the Super Halo Bros merch store. There's a link in the episode description. We've got t-shirts, we've got sweatshirts, we've got coffee mugs. I know Gordon, everydayer, ordered himself a coffee mug, and he's going to send us a photo enjoying Locked On Angels in the morning with his coffee cup. So if you're interested in getting some Super Halo Bros merch, there's other Angels-related shirts as well. We'd love for you to support the Super Halo Bros, support us directly, Mike and I. So head on into the Super Halo Bros store with the link in the episode description.
John, we evaluated the coaches and manager this week and had our thoughts and our opinions. And then we asked our everydayers to share their thoughts and opinions. So Steve G on YouTube said this regarding Johnny Washington. No, He has done an absolute terrible job. Look at the stats. The team is batting .229. The offense averaged 8.74 strikeouts per game. The Angels had to be among the worst situational hitting teams in the majors. You can pick a single player he might have helped. I look at the entire team statistic. Baseball is a team sport. John, what are your thoughts in regards to Steve G on Johnny Washington?
Yeah, I don't discount the fact that, the strikeouts can be troubling, but man, when I see team batting average is .229, look, I mean, how much of that can you attribute to Cole Tucker and Nico Cavadas and any of the other guys that they picked up along the way and gave some looks to? So it really has to be a conversation around what did the individual guys do? Look, I know Joe Adell finished with a .207 batting average, and that doesn't look great at the end of the year. But I think what you and I are trying to communicate here, Mike, is the fact that these guys had to make adjustments all season long. They had to figure things out all season long.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a lot of things clicked toward the end of the season. You saw Mickey Moniak go on a tear. You saw Joe Adell find it again. I know Logan O'Hoppe struggled at the end of the season, and you and I kind of agree that that's a lot of wear and tear and catching games and being behind the plate for most of those. So I just think about the guys who contribute to that .229 average, and even guys, even though there weren't a lot of guys who hit .250 plus. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it was always going to look like this. I think it was always going to look like this, and you got to start somewhere. I think you got to tear something down before you can build it back up, and so that's why I'm not concerned about having Johnny Washington on this team. Plus, having watched the team as closely as we have, we know how easy it is for these guys to fall into their habits and keep doing those and then go, why isn't anybody telling them not to do this or not to do that? And this year, when we had that complaint, well, it seemed like things changed. You mentioned it yesterday. Joe Adell's long 500-foot swing. It's like, bro, get back to your short, compact swing it like Mike Trout because you can. And toward the end of the season, he did that. So I understand if you want to look at the numbers, totally get that. But at the end of the day, you have to look at the individual adjustments that were made all season long. So that's my opinion on that. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. And I'm reading the next comment. Is it Ambash on YouTube said, man, I've never been upset with you guys like I am right now. Well, I'm mad at you too. Did Mike just say Johnny Washington did a good job over Enright? Seriously, we didn't have one guy bat over 250 with Johnny Wash. And I think when you're looking at a team, you can look at the overall numbers and emphasize what you just said, John. A lot of players are factoring into that 250 batting average for the whole team, 229 overall. I know nobody batted over 250, but we have to go back to Joe Adell's 182, and he got back over 200. And why did he get back over that? Because Johnny Wash said, hey, bro, you need to get rid of the leg kick. Why did Zach Neto have the 2020 season that he had? He said, hey, bro, you got to get rid of the leg kick. And so there was this development that took place. And the reason why the statistics this year didn't look as good hitting as they did last year is, remember, these are just a bunch of young dudes that are trying to figure out how to play baseball. And a lot of them didn't have any minor league experience or just a blip on the radar in the minor leagues. And so they're learning how to play at the major league level. And Johnny Washington, in my opinion, did a really good job of helping them find out what they're really good at and making it something that they would continue to practice and put into play every time they came to the plate. So I get the frustration, Ambash. I get the frustration with Johnny Wash. But the truth is that we have to give these kids and their coaches some time to implement strategies and rhythms, because if we just move on so quickly, and we'll talk about another everydayer who said something about firing everybody, if we move on so quickly, then it's not going to be helpful for the players or for the team. Right, John?
Yeah, if you're looking at overall results, you're going to see, nobody over 250, but Nolan Shawnewell, June through September, hit 265. And so, you've got a bad April and a bad May that's going to tank that. And it doesn't give you the full picture. Mike, when I look at the weather and, it's 75 degrees in Pasadena and I dress for that, when I drive up to Big Bear and it's a lot colder up there, I'm like, what happened? What? The weather changed. I mean, I thought it was 75 degrees. You know what I'm saying? So when you look at the stats on the stat sheet, I think that's kind of the attitude that we can have sometimes. It's like, if you're going to dress for 75 degree weather, you can't expect it to be 75 in Big Bear or in the mountains or something, or in the desert or that sort of thing. There's nuance to all of this conversation. I think that's an important thing to remember. Kimber Holstein on YouTube said, I think Barry definitely deserves more time to develop an actual pitching program, not like we had much of one before him, especially since he gave a huge push on the pitching lab and it's actually happening. I agree that the mental hurdles and the unteaching of the old system was really trying on Sandy, Detmers, and Canning. I remember feeling like I wanted to shake them by the shoulders and say, get out of your own head. I realized around August that despite our starters struggling, I don't miss Sandy in the rotation. I kept thinking, well, at least we don't have another stress, that's a ball of stress like Sandoval. Quijada had some flares of the old teaching struggles, but he still felt spicy on the mound. I would love to see the Angels grab Brent Strom, for a type of advisor role, maybe even if it's like a spring trainer advisor role, whatever, I'll take it. What do you say, Mike?
Yeah, I agree. I think that there needs to be some really good work that happens with these guys moving forward. But I do think the get out of your own head is the philosophy of the previous administration and all the things that they have put in there. I think they have to identify who these players are and what they're really good at, and then have them go and do that and stop worrying about some of the emotions and really just keep it simple. I think simple and clear always win. Now, John Mudwater on YouTube said, I've always said a good manager gets the best out of his players. That didn't happen. I don't know who Johnny Washington was coming into the season, but was very excited about Ron Washington. Neither Washington was able to show any sign of improvement with the team. Personally, I would do some firing. I would have to 100% disagree, because I think Mudwater, I think the waters are a bit muddy for you when it comes to looking at Washington, because there were players that really did improve. And the truth is, if we just fire these guys, you're no better than Arte Moreno in the sense that you're just moving on and saying, okay, that didn't work. Let me just keep moving on. And there's not going to be any development. There's not going to be any system put into play. And you have to give some people some time. I know personally for me, there was an employee that I have that is currently on my team. He's been there for 10 years. And in year 2, it would have been easy to fire him because the results weren't there. Now in year 10, one of the best employees that we have because of what he's implemented, but it took some time. And so a good leader is not going to just see the overall results and go, yeah, it didn't work out the way that I wanted. A good leader is going to look at the nuance and say, I see this, I see that, and I'm going to move forward here and give them a little bit more time to continue to develop things and figure some things out.
Yeah, look, we've been clamoring to have a young core like this for a very long time, but it's not as if everybody comes up and is Bo Bichette or is Mike Trout.
Right,
like that
right.
Isn't going to happen all the time. Adley Rutschman or Jackson Holiday, right? It takes some time for these guys to figure some things out. And again, there's a lot of undoing that needs to be done from the previous years. And I think that this is a step in that process. I mentioned this in the comments on YouTube the other day when somebody was talking about Ron Washington. And I said, look, everybody who's come across his path has had their career change for the good for the rest of their lives. Marcus Semien was nowhere near a good shortstop. Suddenly he gets to be a Gold Glove contender. He gets to be close to an MVP in the last few years. Freddie Freeman, who worked with Wash in Atlanta, is still doing the Washington, toss me the ball and I scoop it up before his Dodgers game. There's a lasting impact that Ron Washington has on these guys. And so you're not going to see the immediate results in the first year, but if you look at the small samples, like Zach Neto, for sure. I mean, look at the season he had. I don't think he would have been this guy last year. One last thing, Mike, Good Luck Chuck on YouTube said, let's not forget Rengifo, who had a very good year based on his video post. He's worked hard this offseason. Hopefully the rest of our team has the same work ethic. Yeah, we can't forget about Rengifo, can we?
No, don't forget about Rengifo, because I think he's somebody that really impacted this lineup and why they struggled late in the season, because he wasn't in the lineup. He was somebody that moved the lineup over, and that's what this lineup needs. They need a hitter that does that. And I think if Rengifo continues to do what he did this last year, we'll see another great year hitting over 300, somebody who's really improved, which, by the way, he was doing that because of some of the adjustments that he and Johnny Washington worked on. And so if he was in this lineup, he would be a over 300 hitter, and everybody wouldn't just be at 250 or less. And so he's somebody that I think we can really, really count on in 2025.
Yeah, credit to Ron Washington for actually giving him playing time too, because that's the biggest thing that we have been calling for Rengifo over the last couple of years.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And unlike any other apps, Prize Picks allows you to play just against the numbers. All you have to do is pick more or less of 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Right now, you can win up to 100 times your money with Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Download the app right now and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. Again, you download the app, enter our promo code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. Don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
Got a couple of questions here regarding Arte Moreno, some minor league prospects, and the offseason, Mike. Nate Darling on Twitter said, if Jerry Reinsdorf is open to selling the White Sox, why isn't Arte open to selling the Angels? I guess Jerry does have his World Series win, and in parentheses, he said, stupid AJ Pierzynski. But come on, man, is what Nate said. So, yeah, in case you haven't heard, Jerry Reinsdorf is open to selling the Chicago White Sox, and here on Locked On Angels, we've had plenty of conversations about him and how similar he is to Arte Moreno. I guess where the similarities end, Mike, is that Jerry's open to selling and Arte is not. What's going on with that?
I wonder if it has to do with bottom line. I wonder if it has to do with money. And maybe he's just looking at, I'm going to have to spend a whole lot of money for this team to be competitive again because we were the worst team ever and people weren't showing up. And I wonder if you look at the Angels, you see attendance was great. At least ticket sales were great. And I'm sure that they had all sorts of sponsor deals and things like that. And so it may not be in the red with the Angels like it is with the White Sox, if you know what I'm saying, like with the money, with the finances. I would have to say it's a financial decision. I wouldn't see any other reason why he would want to leave. I mean, maybe he's embarrassed by the team and how they played. That could be a part of it. We know that there was this meeting that came out. The Athletic reported on that. Maybe it's because it finally got to Jerry Reinsdorf and hasn't gotten to Arte Moreno yet. And Arte's like, wait, I'm going to keep pressing in. Maybe where the White Sox are at are where the Angels will be in 2 years or something along those lines, where they're just kind of over it. It feels like Reinsdorf is over it. That's really the vibe I get from him when he talks.
I think the biggest difference too is the fact that he owns the Bulls. And so even if he did sell one team, he still has the other team. And if Arte were to sell his baseball team, then he's left with nothing, which, we want Arte to sell the team right off into the sunset and, have a happy life. Leave us with our favorite team and you go do you, boo-boo. But I mean, I think that's the biggest difference here with Reinsdorf and Arte Moreno. And perhaps we keep drilling down on that ego of Arte Moreno. It's going to make a big difference here. Mike, Glenn Thomas on YouTube said, who is this new Dominican Alex Rodriguez-like prospect the Angels have? His last name starts with an L. I don't know much about the international part of the organization or how it works. Do the Angels have training facilities in the Dominican Republic? Well, the person that Glenn is referring to is Josue Lugo. Mm-hmm. The Angels were able to sign him. Mike, he's 17 years old. He's just a kid, but he is an international free agent that they signed. And the Angels, in fact, do have training facilities in the DR. In fact, they have had Albert Pujols spend time down there with the young players. Remember, he's got that 10-year personal services contract with the Angels, and so he spent a lot of time with the Dominican players. In fact, in the Dominican Summer League this year, Lugo hit .301, a .370 on base, had a .466 slugging, and an .836 OPS. Across 53 games, he hit 11 doubles, 3 triples, 5 home runs, 18 stolen bases, 17 walks, 51 strikeouts in 219 plate appearances. And then he played 394 innings at shortstop, where he had a .953 fielding percentage. I know that's low in Major League Baseball terms, but if you go and look at guys who are in the minor leagues or even the international leagues, you're going to see those 950s for fielding percentage. But in 190 chances, he had 114 assists, 9 errors, and 17 double plays turned. Mike, they're trying him out at shortstop, but he could end up at third base in the future. But the thing about Lugo is that, again, being 17 years old, he's already got a lot of power potential now, but the fact that he could, get bigger, get stronger, put on some muscle, put on some weight, that's going to change things for him. He's 6'3", so he's a big guy out there. According to MLB.com, his estimated time of arrival to the majors would be about 2029. So there's certainly a long way to go with Josue Lugo. However, lots of promising stuff there that we can all get excited for.
He'll be 21 years old, so he'll still be a youngin' by the time he gets up here. All right, Logan O'Hoppy Truther on Twitter said, what would an ideal offseason look like? For me, it would be signing an outfielder in Santander or O'Neill, and maybe going after a starter like Fried or Kikuchi, and a bullpen piece like Hoffman or Trian. So I really like what Logan O'Hoppy Truther did here, because I think that this would probably be what the Angels end up doing. I wonder if Max Fried and Kikuchi are a little bit outside of their budget.
Not Kikuchi, but Fried maybe, yeah.
Maybe Max Fried. But I like this because I think this seems like a reasonable approach to the offseason for the Halos. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I'd love to see them add an impact bat. Again, you can't count on Mike Trout to be there all season long. That's the unfortunate truth. I love Mike Trout, but you just can't count on him to play 150 games at this point. And until he does it, you can't say that he's going to until it actually happens. When I think of starters, I think a Kikuchi is that kind of Waka, Seth Lugo deal, except that Kikuchi had such a great time with the Astros that I would worry that his price would be a little above budget. And the fact is he's not been great in his career, Mike. And so he found something this year with the Blue Jays, and he found something with the Astros. Fried's an interesting one. He might be in that Buehler level of free agent. Now, as far as bullpen pieces go, I like that O'Hoppy Truther did consider that. And perhaps there is a world where they add one more, but I think they're set, to be honest with you. I think they have the depth. I think they have the guys that they need in the bullpen. And I think that there is so much untapped potential with the minor leaguers in terms of their arms and who they could bring up to be in this bullpen. And bullpen pieces are volatile, and you never know what you're going to get. And so you have to have the flexibility to be like, we need to move this guy here and this guy there and that guy there. Otherwise, you're stuck with an Aaron Loop for 3 years.
Yeah.
And you can't move him down to the minors. You get a Ryan Tepera, you're stuck with him. And so I just think if you have flexibility with your bullpen, because these guys have options, you can rest guys more. You can send them down because you know you're not going to use them for the next couple of days or what have you, and bring up a fresh arm. I think that would lend itself well to the Angels bullpen in 2025.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and it's a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.
Hey, be sure to give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to today's episode, get in the comment section, leave us a comment because we love interacting with you there. Hit that like button and subscribe button on your way down. It really helps out Mike and I directly. So if you want to give us a little love, hit that subscribe button. We're on our way to 8,000 subscribers. We'd love you to be part of that. Mike, we got a weekend here, but what are we talking about on Monday's show?
What went well in 2024? Did anything go well in 2024? We think so, and we'll share what we think Monday on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. Until then, we hope you have a great weekend. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
All right, everybody, you take care this weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.
Good stuff. Fanmail Friday.
I love our everydayers and their questions.